This is a great honor for me. Steve's had a good relationship with Utah State University for several years. I met him when he first started recruiting students out of the Huntsman school program, and I've also become friends with him. So I'm very grateful to be able to do this. So what I have for us today is just a series of questions to get Steve to tell us about himself, about Resideo, and what's going on in the business world. I didn't know coming in that we would have day in the life high school students, so this is perfect to be able to talk about what people can do to advance in the business world and to enter the business world. So why don't we start off with the first question, if I can. Steve, you were first introduced to Utah State University as an executive overseeing HR recruiting here on campus. What do you like about Utah State University, and what do you like about the students that attend Utah State University?
Yeah, I actually, can you guys hear me okay? There we go, is that better? Turn it. Oh, I think in adjusting it, I turned it off. Sorry about that. I actually got introduced to the program several years before I got the opportunity to be the campus exec here. I joined Honeywell, my prior company, many years ago as a HR leader in their aerospace business unit, and came in, and Honeywell had a very aggressive university relations program, and a lot of the Utah State students were in the program along with a lot of other students from other universities. And as I interacted with them all, it was clear to me that the Utah State students stood out. They really did, and I mean that sincerely. I'm not just saying that because I'm here, but they really did stand out. In fact, to the point where I kind of took a step back and was grateful that I was a little later in my career and didn't have to compete against these guys and gals. I was that impressed with their contributions in the workplace, their business acumen, their professionalism, and their understanding of what business really was and what it meant to run a business. And then I got the opportunity to be the campus exec here and get a chance to peek behind the curtain and see a little bit of the secret sauce, and quickly understood that the program itself, the MHR program, which is what I'm familiar with here, exceptional program relative to the faculty, to the concepts that are taught here. It's rooted in business reality and not business theory. It has a strong emphasis on business acumen. And then the selection criteria for the students that come into the program is incredibly high. So as a result, you have individuals who make it through the program, exit, join the workplace, and are immediately productive, contributing, as I mentioned, strong business acumen, and hit the ground running. And so absolutely fell in love with the program and remain to fall in love with the program. And while the folks on maybe watching this on the video can't see this, but everybody in the room can, it's also hard to argue with a view like that. As you look out over the valley, it's absolutely gorgeous here.
When we had breakfast this morning, you were saying broadly at the different organizations at which you've worked, you like to see people, to see blue-collar executives, yes. People that have come up through blue-collar. We try to, across the university and definitely in the Huntsman School, try to have a blue-collar work ethic. What do you mean by that, and how does that help someone in their career?
Yeah, I think that's a key attribute for individuals, and it's a humble approach. It's a hardworking approach. It's no one takes anything for granted. Everything is earned, and there is a work ethic associated with that. It is great that folks are afforded the opportunity to go do fancy internships and some other things. I didn't have a chance to do that. I spent my college summers working as a laborer in the steel mills because I had to figure out a way to pay for college. And so you really get a work ethic and a mindset associated with that, and then you apply it to your academics, and I think it's a perfect combination. And it was something that in my prior company we really looked for, and then my current company, the Resideo, it's a trait and a mindset that we really truly value. And Utah State has been excellent as far as providing individuals with that mindset and that work ethic.
And what I see on my side is, I teach only graduate students, but when I talk to my colleagues that teach in the undergraduate program, we have among the lowest student debt rates of students who graduate across the country. And part of it is we have lower fees and tuition here, but a big part of it is these young men and women are grinding it out in the summer and
yes.
after classes to get things done. So they really come with that type of experience. So I'd like to move on a little bit and talk about Resideo. Resideo, of course, is a new spin-off from Honeywell. It started off as a $4 billion spin-off from Honeywell 2 years ago, is that correct?
Correct.
And so I wanted to better understand what you did, and I want to give you a chance to explain to us that. So when I looked up on the About Us section on the Resideo webpage, here's the description I found about the company. Resideo pioneers the next wave of supported home technology to help you feel comfortable, safe, and secure, relaxing as if you were home, even when you're not. Can you give us an overview of Resideo's business model?
Yeah, absolutely. Prior to the introduction, who here had heard of Resideo? Okay, a handful of folks. So this was a $5 billion business unit inside of Honeywell, and we spun off in October of 2018. And what that means is that Honeywell took a part of the business, separated it out, and then it became its own publicly traded corporation. We are not affiliated with Honeywell other than a licensing agreement and some other things in any way, shape, or form. We're our own standalone company. We've got 13,000 employees in 31 countries, and we do $5 billion in revenue. So we really refer to ourselves as a $5 billion startup company, because that's what we are. We get a chance to do things the way we've always wanted to do it, change our culture, change our processes. But fundamentally, we have two business units. We have a business unit called ADI, which is an absolute world leader in home product distribution. So when you call a contractor to come into your house and you want that contractor to install a security system, anything else associated with the house, he or she's going to go to ADI, and that's where they purchase their equipment. And we sell Resideo equipment, we sell competitor equipment. It's not just our stuff. We sell a wide range of things through that distribution business. And it is probably the most successful distribution company out there. And then the other half of our business is what we call products and solutions. And this is, when you think about the connected home, you think about thermostats, security equipment, cameras, leak detection, water systems, etc. That is all part of products and solutions. So when you think about the connected home, which is what we're migrating to as a society, we have the full cadre of products associated with connecting the home. And those two business units make up our corporation. As I mentioned, we've been a standalone since October of 2018, and an incredibly fun experience for all the employees, incredibly challenging experience as we figure out this process of becoming a corporation. Even though we're starting off with a little over $5 billion in revenue, it's a very unique experience.
What do you do as a company to provide value for customers that your competitors aren't providing? Why would they choose you?
So if you think about the connected home, right now if you look at my app, look at my phone, I've got 14 different apps on my phone for things inside my house. And it is a fragmented industry, a lot of single point solutions, whether it's security, thermostats, video doorbells, leak detection, whatever it may be. What we offer is a tremendous focus on a do-it-for-me channel. So a lot of the things that you deal with in the home are do-it-yourself. You go buy it, you try to install it. Sometimes the installation works, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of the do-it-yourself products people buy end up sitting in the box in the garage and never actually get installed. We focus on the professional channel where you hire your contractor, and then your contractor is able to go to Resideo and go to our ADI distribution or wherever it may be, but install the full suite of connected home activity where you're able to, and we're very close to rolling out a combined app where you have your security, your comfort, so think about your thermostat, your air quality, your water quality on there. Those are things that you don't currently have right now. And all of us, as I look around the room, all of us take tremendous care of our bodies, take tremendous care of our cars, but we don't have really a proactive, preventative approach to ensuring the connected home. And that's what we're trying to do. And if you look at the connected home from a quality of air and a quality of water in it, two incredibly important factors that I think we as a society are going to quickly start to focus on.
So what's home technology going to look like in 20 years? I keep hearing the term Internet of Things. The
Yes.
young men and women I know studying computer science, computer engineering are migrating in that direction. What's home technology going to look like?
That's a great question. 20 years is a long time. In fact, I look out here at the room here, and this is the group that's going to define it for us. But it has to be much easier than it is right now. For those of you that have all the apps on your phone, you know it's a challenge because you're always trying to reset the apps, trying to get it reconnected, everything else. We have to make the home experience fully connective. You can't have all these different single point solutions in there. You need one solution, and it has to be incredibly easy to use. I see, this is me speaking here, not the company, but I see us quickly evolving from apps to voice. You have a single entity in the home or a single solution in the home that drives everything in the house. Everything's connected to the house, and it's all tied in together. It'll be pretty exciting. It'll be pretty cool. I think that my personal view is a lot of the movies you watch that show the future probably are spot on as to what the home will be like at that stage. But this is the population, the generation ahead that's going to define that.
Okay, great. Can you talk a little bit about Resideo's environmental stewardship? What do they do, and how do they behave to be good environmental stewards?
Yeah, where we help from the environment is, and you heard the term in there about comfort in the home. In a lot of cases, if you knew the real air quality in your house, you knew the real water quality in the house, you knew how much water you wasted because you have a leak somewhere in the house that you don't know about, your energy efficiency, you're leaving the home and your thermostats are set, really low in the summer or really high in the winter, and there's no one in the house, and you're burning energy from that standpoint. We have solutions to all of that. So just through our products alone, the contribution we make relative to energy efficiency, water purity, ensuring there isn't water waste, air quality, that's our contribution. And personally, I think as folks learn more about the water waste they have, and water is our most precious resource, once you understand what's taking place in the home and in your yard relative to water usage, where you can save water, where you can save energy, we'd have a tremendous impact on the environment from that standpoint.
Wow, well, thank you. So I'd like to shift our discussion a little bit over to talk about you and your background and your experiences. You were introduced to us as the Chief Human Resource Officer for Resideo. What are your main responsibilities and duties?
So I've got the pleasure of overseeing all HR activity globally. So, and for me, that includes compensation and benefits, employee relations, culture, organizational development, diversity and inclusion, HR operating systems, HR generalists, the business support HR function, staffing, talent management. So everything that you would traditionally have under human resources, I have, and with my team, we run for the corporation, and we run for both of the business units and the corporate office. And then on top of that, I also have the pleasure of handling all global real estate, which is a eye-opening experience when you didn't realize at the time, but you quickly learn you have 289 facilities in 31 countries. What I thought was an add-on responsibility turned into be a whole heck of a lot more work than ever anticipated.
Wow. And so can you talk a little bit about, especially the high school folks in the room probably think of human resources as what Toby on The Office did.
Yes.
Can you, I had a similar experience. We had a meet and greet, a recruiting event, and there were 3 young women at that session. They were both freshmen in the program and literally asked me that, this is a master's of HR, is this what Toby does? Can you contrast how Toby is portrayed on The Office with what professional strategic human resource management is today?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, unfortunately, TVs and movies haven't been good to HR by any means. But the industry and the job function has evolved significantly, even in my 30 years. The demands on the function relative to business acumen and understanding how companies make money and understanding how you manage human capital across the entire corporation have increased significantly and make it exciting for us. So when you look at the second largest spend that a corporation has, typically take in an industrial environment, which we are, the number one spend is your raw materials, your indirect costs. The second one is on people, and you spend a tremendous amount of money on managing the people side of the business. And so where we focus on is ensuring a lot of the basics, right people in the right job with the right skill sets. They understand what it is they're supposed to do, what their challenges are, and what we need from them. So relative to staffing, internal movement, who you hire, who stays in the company, who doesn't stay in the company, how do you right-size the organization for the cost structure of the business, how do you structure the business? We're going through a lot of this right now, and you've read about it. For those of you that did some research on Resideo, we're going through a operational review and transforming the company, and in that we're changing the org structure, we're changing how we do business, we're changing what people do, we're simplifying our processes, we're trying to move away from the Honeywell processes, which were fantastic for a $40 billion company, but are too burdensome for a $5 billion company. So how do we as an HR function help redesign work and ensure that we're significantly more efficient and simpler and easier and stay nimble? So there's a lot of components. As the field has evolved over time, it's still a fun area to pick on in the movies and around the water cooler, but the demands on the function have changed significantly and evolved significantly. And that's why when I talk about Utah State and the MHR program, you heard me mention business acumen multiple times. To understand how businesses operate, how businesses make money, is absolutely paramount in an HR professional nowadays.
And why is that? Because I know on our side, when you and I entered the field, people in HR were people. And people were well respected and could move up with degrees in sociology, psychology, and social work. And there's still a path for those folks. But we as a MHR program really push to bring in more business majors, econ majors, finance majors, accounting majors. What is it about business? Why is that growing as an important skill set for HR?
Yeah, it's businesses are becoming much more complex, and how we do business is more complex, and you can't contribute to the human capital side of things if you don't understand the basic tenets of an organization. Whether you're in a nonprofit organization, a for-profit, private equity situation, or a publicly traded corporation, or a home business, whatever it may be, you have to understand how the business operates in order to best understand how to deploy the human capital, how to deploy the employees, how to deploy HR processes to align with the business. The days of, when I joined, my undergraduate degree was in personnel administration. So a few different terms ago as far as how you defined HR, and it was more administrative in nature at that time. And that is not the case anymore. The demands from CEOs and from the C-suite of an organization on HR's contribution to the business have evolved really in the past 15 years, and evolved significantly and quickly because they are demanding that this function, which manages the human capital side of things, has a much greater contribution to the success of the corporation overall.
So it seems to me if HR were really strategic, companies would allow or require their top HR people to interact with a board of directors. Could you explain, especially to the high school folks, who is a company's board of directors, and do you have any contact with the board?
Yeah, so we have, we're a publicly traded company, so we have a board of directors, and a board of directors is not unique to a publicly traded company. There are private companies that have advisory boards, et cetera. But they're not employees of the company, they are representatives of the shareholders. So if you think about Resideo, we have 123 million shares of Resideo stock out in the market. And there are people and organizations that own those shares. Those folks are the owners of Resideo. They own the company. And the board of directors are the fiduciaries for those owners. They represent the shareholders and they oversee management. So we meet with our board of directors. We have 8 individuals on the board right now. And we meet with them on a regular basis. We have 5 set meetings a year, but you have multiple informal communication and contact with the board during the course of the year. And they are responsible for making sure that management delivers on their commitments to the shareholders. We, as a management team, have an obligation in our organization to provide a return on investment for the shareholders. That's what we're in business for, is to make money and provide that return on investment for the shareholders, and the board is responsible for overseeing us to make sure that we are doing our jobs from that standpoint. And so we interact with them. I have interaction on a regular basis with the compensation committee, and the compensation committees has multiple directives, but they determine the compensation structure, the incentive programs. They oversee our talent management processes, our diversity and inclusion processes for the corporation, and they ensure that what we're doing as a company aligns with what they think the shareholders are looking for. You have an audit committee, you have a nomination and governance committee, and then those are the mandatory committees, and then you have a lot of other committees depending upon what the organization needs, and the board makes those determinations. But they're the ones that we're accountable to. We just had them in the office on Wednesday of this week, and then we've got another formal board meeting on here at the end of the month with a lot of the 2020 plans that we're presenting to them. So they oversee us as a company.
Let me shift over a little bit from Resideo to you and your thinking and your background. One of the pillars of the Huntsman School is high standards of ethical conduct in business. And I wonder if you could tell us about a time that you faced a serious ethical challenge that you, Steve Kelly, faced, and how you resolved that.
Yeah, and I love that about the program. And just a general statement for everybody, I'm amazed at what I see in the workplace, to be honest with you. Don't ever sacrifice your moral code or your ethics for your job, ever. Simple as that. Your reputation is worth so much more, and I am amazed at what I see and what people are willing to do and put their job in jeopardy over $30 on an expense report or something foolish like that. I have been very fortunate to work for corporations that take a very firm stance on ethics. We will, and the last several companies felt the same way, we will gladly walk away from business if there is any implication of impropriety on anything. And that's what you want. You want that in an employer because you don't want to ever be placed in a position where the lines are kind of hazy. You want those lines to be very, very clear. So I've been fortunate that I haven't had a significant situation that was personally taxing on me from an ethics standpoint. I've had to deal with it in the workplace where folks have had violations, and we've had to exit people. And what I'm looking for in a company is one that takes a very firm line and position on that, and we do. But then there are companies though you'll get into where things are not as clear cut. You may have and I have had this earlier in my career, a top performer who is particularly unique with a specific skill set, and he or she may not have clear delineation on what's ethical and what's not. And sometimes a company's willing to kind of look the other way because of the skill set of that individual. Whereas if another employee who may not have that unique skill set were in the same situation, a corporation would be much more quick to act. And that's a frustrating situation because it's not an acceptable situation. And I've had to deal with that with leadership before where I said, I understand the implications on the business, but we have an obligation to our other employees and to ourselves relative to our character as a company. And companies do have a character. Companies have a culture. They have a persona, and we have an obligation to adhere to that. And while it may not be in the best interest of the company, we have to make the change. And it's a difficult conversation at times, but it's one you have to hold your ground on, to stand your ground on, and I firmly believe that.
How could, especially undergraduate students, how could they know the ethical character of the companies that they consider? Because I agree with you that to think carefully about what type of company you join and joining a company that has these high ethical standards, how could they know?
Yeah, you ask. It's a great question, and you ask. You ask that in your interviews. You ask how the code of conduct is distributed and enforced within an organization. You ask how the CEO reinforces that on a regular basis. I've been with companies where at the end of every town hall, after thanking the employees for all the hard work they've done and results they've delivered, et cetera, where the CEO made a personal statement and made it very clear his position on our code of conduct and the standards and ethics, and the fact that if you do something outside of that, you're on your own. And you ask how the companies enforce those standards within an organization. And that is something I think you're entitled to know going into it, because you read about it in the news all the time, corporations that do some things that aren't above board. And then unfortunately, particularly in this day and age where everything about yourself is out on social media now, and you get tied to a company that has had some bad acts, that stays with you forever. So you want to ask that question.
Now, I have academic colleagues that do research on stigma, and people who are affiliated with companies that have misbehaved badly have worse, poor job outcomes after
Yes.
leaving those organizations. And so it's in your best interest to think about that carefully and uphold those standards and stay with organizations that are ethical.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So last question focused on you, and then we'll talk about some questions of kind of advice for students. But for you, last one, what's a business book that you read and recommend that you would recommend to these students?
So there are actually two that I recommend. And the first one is an oldie but a goodie. It comes from 2001 by Jim Collins, called Good to Great. And if you haven't read that, I recommend it. There are 7 key characteristics that that the author talks about relative to what makes a corporation good and what makes it great. And one of them that really resonates with me is and I just forget it was 4 words how he articulated, but it was basically about getting the right caliber of talent, get highly talented individuals, and then find the right job for them. And as simple and as basic as it is very true. And he talks about getting people in the right seat on the bus, and ensuring they're in the right roles, and then letting them go do their job. And then counter to that is folks who aren't in the right seat, find the right seat for them, whether it's within the company or within another company. But getting the right level of talent and then letting them go do their jobs is absolutely key. And I think that concept, while not a new concept in 2001 when the book came out, is articulated very well in that book. And the other 6 characteristics are fantastic as well, but that one really resonated with me, and that's timeless. That'll stay with us through all of our careers and everybody's career out here, that concept. The other one is fairly new. It's 2016, and author's name is Jessica Kriegel, Kriegel, I believe, and it's called Unfairly Labeled, and this will apply to everybody in this room. And what Jessica does in this book is she dispels all of the rumors out there about generational differences. So if you're tired of hearing about millennials, and you're tired of hearing about baby boomers, and tired of hearing about Gen X, and how we need to adjust to do this for millennials or that for baby boomers, the author does an absolutely fantastic job of dispelling all of those myths. And we've created those myths, and corporations spend a lot of money chasing these myths and trying to do things to what they think is going to accommodate a particular generation. And it's not the generational aspects that's changing the workplace, it's technology. So working from home, the concept of working from home, and not all companies are supportive of it, but the reason working from home is a popular concept right now is not because of demands from millennials, it's because technology enables it. It's simple as that. So I think if you read that, you'll be very appreciative of the fact that there really isn't the generational divides. And so I highly recommend both those books.
One of the things I like about what you're saying is the research I've read is that, of course, there's difference between you and I and the group of high school students and the graduate students and the undergrads, right?
Yeah.
There's much age difference, but there's not that much difference between our core values and beliefs when we were that age and they at their age. And if there were a real generational difference, you would see differences between older people when they were young and current young people when they were young, and those differences really don't exist.
To me, it's all based upon your circumstances in your life at your time. If you're new to the workforce, you're 25 years old, and you're single, you have certain expectations. If you're 25 and married with kids, your expectations are vastly different. If you're older than 25, which I am, you have different expectations as well. And so it just changes based upon your unique circumstances. I firmly believe it has nothing to do with the generation you're in. How you cut off a particular year. So, okay, those born in 73 are Gen X, or Gen X, those after that's whatever it may be. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how you draw a clear line in the sand on a birthday.
Right. Thank you. That's a great recommendation. So now these next questions are kind of what I anticipate students might ask, or maybe questions I think students should be asking. So the first one is that over your career, you must have seen several people rise into their first role of manager and not do so well at that role. What are some of the mistakes people make in that transition, that first transition to manager, and how can they avoid those mistakes?
And we were fortunate to talk about that a little bit at breakfast this morning. It is a big change going from individual contributor, I mean, it's just you doing your job, you report to a manager, to actually going to a manager role. And what folks, we as companies are at fault for this. We don't provide transition services along those lines. You all of a sudden are asked to manage people, and you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. I mean, none. But yet we expect you to know what to do and go do it. And what people forget, because it's not a comfortable area, they tend to focus on their job and not on the fact that they're also part of their job is managing people. When you become a manager, half of your job, whatever the percentage may be, is managing the folks that work for you and managing their work and helping them be successful in addition to the work you have. And folks, they go to their comfort zone, they spent their entire career up to that point as an individual contributor, and they focus on being an individual contributor and then kind of managing the folks on the side. I was fortunate, my first manager role, I remember it was in Oklahoma City, part of Cooper Industries. I was, 26 years old, and the two folks that worked for me, wonderful, wonderful people, had children older than me. But they fortunately played along and tolerated me and helped me out a lot. They really gave me some tremendous advice, some tremendous feedback, a lot of it instant and on the spot. But it was good to help me understand what the role of the manager was and how my job was to help them do their job and help them be successful. The other thing that I think folks tend to get confused is the difference between leadership and management. And they, in my view, and you'll hear a lot of different theories and philosophies from speakers that come to these programs, and no one is right on everything, and I'm not right on everything. We all have our individual viewpoints, and your job is to take all these viewpoints and kind of triangulate it and formulate your own opinion, and then someday you're sitting up here talking to students with the things you've learned. But to me, management and leadership is a little bit different. Management is getting the job done and making sure your team gets the job done. Leadership is how you inspire folks and how you take folks through difficult situations. And I've seen really good leaders fail because they don't know how to manage. And I've seen managers, really good managers, not grow their career because they're not good leaders. And so you really have to focus on both of those key aspects depending upon what you want to do from a career standpoint. And it doesn't come naturally. You're going to fail. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to have trip-ups. You got to learn from it. You got to seek advice and seek feedback. And you have to have a focus on learning because it's a huge change to go from individual contributor to managing people.
Okay, thank you. That's fantastic. Many of the young women and men here today must be a bit nervous about their first interview for their first post-degree job. What advice do you have for them to perform their very best on these first professional interviews?
Yeah, and my son is here today, Trey. He's a sophomore in high school and taking a tour of the university, and we've been talking about this relative to his interviews with universities. And the first one is relax. It's remember that they're interviewing you as much as you are interviewing them. Now I know it's easier said than done, but relax. But be prepared. Know what questions you're going to ask. Rehearse those questions. If you stand in front of the mirror and practice, that's great. I believe it was last week you had mock interviews. Absolutely, take advantage of those. The more you practice, the more you're prepared, and the easier it is. So make sure you're very prepared, and then know what kind of questions you want to ask ahead of time, because a lot of an interview is you carrying the conversation, and you don't want that transition to be awkward. So know what you want to get out of the conversation and what questions you genuinely have, but have them written down. Practice asking them, but also understand that there is a difference between an interview and a discussion. And an interview is an exchange of information. You want to answer the questions. You want to be succinct, thorough but succinct. It seems conflicting, and it is, but thorough but succinct. And you want to be compelling in your answers. And you're only able to do that if you've practiced and you're rehearsed and you're well prepared. But relax. It's okay.
So the next step in that process, many of these students will work as interns with the opportunity to be hired into a full-time position. What advice do you have for students to turn their internships into a full-time offer?
Yeah. One of the challenges with internships, it has a temporary nature to it. And very short defined period of time. And where I see students that don't do as well in the internship, in general, they've really defined it as a short period of time, and they're looking at it as a short period of time, and you shouldn't do that. You have to take it seriously. You have to understand that every day you're being interviewed. So most interviews, as you go through your career, are about an hour. The challenge with an internship, it's 6-7 weeks of being interviewed every day, every hour during that time frame. You're always being observed and being watched. Don't let that psych you out on it and put too much pressure on yourself. But take it seriously. Take your internship seriously. Own the job. I'll use an example, and I use it all the time with my team, and I'm glad they're not here because they'd roll their eyes at hearing this, but if you think about someone living in a house, there is a difference between a homeowner and a home renter. The homeowner does repairs differently than the renter. Own the job. Even though you're only in it for a rented period of time, a temporary period of time, the mindset you have to have is your job. You're going to fix things like a homeowner and own it. And then on top of that, during the internship, you're also there to learn. Ask a ton of questions. Be inquisitive. You don't necessarily have to interrupt during a meeting to ask a question unless it's pertinent to what you're trying to accomplish. But afterwards, go talk to the manager and say, hey, can you help me explain what took place here and what took place there and why? I want to learn. But that inquisitive nature resonates with companies. They want folks who are hungry to learn in addition to the contributions they make.
So I'm going to ask you one more two-part question, and then we'll throw it out to the audience. So as you think about questions you might have for Steve Kelly, it's one of my favorite questions is, what's the best career move you've ever made, and what's the worst career move you've ever made?
Yeah, so I'll start with the worst career move I ever made. And I guarantee you, as I look across this room, as you all pursue your professional careers, you're going to have the opportunity to make the exact same mistake that I made. And don't make it. It's tempting, but don't make it. So earlier in my career, I had the chance to go be the head HR person for a small corporation, really small company. I thought, awesome, I'm going to be the number one person. I get a chance to go run my own show. I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to get to do it 10 years before any of my peers. This is fantastic. It's a huge mistake. I got into that job. I'd only been working professionally for 12 years or so. And there were some things I was able to do in the first 18 months of that job that were pretty basic, but were good for that company. But I quickly ran out of ideas and quickly ran out of knowledge on what I was supposed to do next. I was in over my head at that stage, and there was no one to learn from. So Really the lesson I learned from that standpoint, and I quickly realized I needed to go back to a big corporation where I am one of many, and there's a lot of more senior folks above me that I can learn from, so I really understand what it is we need to deliver as a function. So the lesson there is, as you go through your career, don't chase titles, chase experiences. Because when you're interviewing for my job, no one could possibly care any less what titles you had along the way or when you got those titles. And the extra $2,000 you're chasing here or there isn't a hill of beans at the end of your career. It's not. But chase the experiences. Go do the difficult things. And then that concept ties directly in with the best career move I ever made. We had a vice president of HR in Dusseldorf, Germany that went off on leave, and it was a big gap in the organization. And so I called my boss and said, can I please go? I want to go do that. What an awesome experience. I don't know anything about doing work in Europe or dealing with European works councils or local works councils or anything, but I'll go do it. And of course, they were in a need for someone there, so he said, great. So at the time, I had 2 3-year-old boys and a 4-month-old daughter. And so we packed up and moved to Dusseldorf, Germany, and stayed. The 5 of us lived in a 2-bedroom flat. We look back on it now and we romanticize about it and think, oh, it was just a wonderful experience. It wasn't. It was difficult. But from a work experience, it was exciting. I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And everybody knew I had no idea what the heck I was doing, so I got a lot of leeway from that standpoint, but I got to learn. So if you're ever given an opportunity that is just a unique, once-in-a-lifetime experience, no matter what circumstances you have taking place in your life, go do it. I mean, I'll tell you a personal side of that. We landed in Germany. The 2 cars they gave us were both automatics. My wife had never driven a stick before. We put 3 car seats in the back of her car, because had 2 3-year-olds and a 4-month-old, and then the next day I left for Singapore. And she had to learn how to drive a stick in a foreign country with 3 kids in the back, because she had to go to the grocery store to get food. You had to go do all this stuff. And it was just, we look back on it, it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. So take advantage of those experiences.
If I were giving a final exam for this session today, it would be don't chase titles, chase experiences.
Yes.
And many things that have been great, but I like that a lot. So I'd like to turn it over to you. What questions do you have for Steve Kelly? And we've got a microphone right there to help you speak loud.
Go ahead and just raise your hand and also introduce yourself. That'd be great.
My name is Spencer Fairbank. I recently read something from Stephen R. Covey that talks about how we are like icebergs in that we focus a lot of our contributions on what's on the surface, and that's kind of what a resume and an interview is like. But there are a lot of things that we can't detect that are below the surface at first. What are some of the skills that you appreciate that aren't readily detected on the surface at the beginning of being introduced to a person that you recognize later on that we should work on?
Yeah, we were talking about this at breakfast this morning. So it's interesting that when you interview folks, so we're interviewing for a new chief financial officer and a new chief executive officer for Resideo, and they set up the interviews for that, and I have to fight with the scheduler to give me a full hour. 1 hour, because we'll give you 45 minutes. I can't accomplish anything in 45 minutes. I certainly can't accomplish it in 60 minutes. I'd like to have 3 hours, to be honest with you. But you're right. In the interview process, when you first meet people, it is very superficial. It's top level, and it's really hard to understand what their true capabilities are. And so, what I typically glean out of getting to know folks further is the concept I talked a little bit about ago, Spencer, which is the job ownership. Because we are kind of like an iceberg. You see contributions at the top level, but what you don't know is what has the individual done to ensure the sustainability of those accomplishments? Did they do something through brute force that if I lose the person, I lose the accomplishment, or is it something that's sustained through the life, whether they're in the role or not? And somehow or another in those initial interviews, we have to get much better at understanding what's below the waterline in those icebergs to understand how they're really going to contribute to the organization. And that's really hard to do, particularly in a short period of time or in a brief meeting. But as I have gotten to know talent over the years and I've gotten to know folks better, It's those folks that really take the time to ensure sustainability in their accomplishments, because you can get the glory by brute force on fixing something at the top and everybody sees it and applauds and runs on to the next challenge, but things can quickly fall apart. It's those leaders that we look for that understand I have to solve things, goes back to job ownership, solve things that are solved forever, that are fixed forever. And that's really where the focus needs to be. I hope I answered the question from that standpoint, but that's what I always find after the fact, after I meet somebody that really helps me determine their contributions to the organization.
Great.
My name's Addison Chandler. On a basic level, we go to work so that we can get paid, right? And one thing kind of rolling through my head is how to determine whether or how you know you're being properly compensated and valued at a company. Because, there's the monetary compensation, but also the value you hold in the organization, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And the two don't always line up. I have folks that are really heavily complicated, but we don't are compensated, but we don't value them, and others that are compensated fairly, but we value tremendously. Compensation is based on the job, not the individual. Now there are differentiators. You have two people in the same job. There may be some differentiation in compensation based upon the individual, but in general, your compensation is defined by the job. And for the most part, corporations are going to pay you within a set range and keep you competitive from a compensation standpoint for a couple of reasons. Because if we're underpaying you for a job, someone else is going to pay you the right level for that job, and we lose you. And then I got to go hire somebody who I'm going to have to pay the right level for that job. So to avoid all that, I might as well just pay you the right level for the job. So corporations will pay you the right level for the job. So that takes care of itself by default. And we do annual internal equity studies on compensation to make sure that all the folks in the jobs, equivalent jobs, are paid equitably and paid similarly, not the same, but paid similar. And if there's any differentiation in there, it's based upon actual skill sets in the job. The second part of that question, which is the more intriguing one, is the valued. How are you valued at work? And this goes back to the difference between a manager and a leader that you work for. Your manager makes sure you're paid correctly. Your leader is the one that makes sure you understand whether you're valued or not. And he or she is going to reinforce that on a regular basis through informal rewards processes, through simple things they do on a daily basis relative to how they interact with you, acknowledgement at a larger level relative to particular accomplishments. Now, one thing we have to be cautious of is making sure we're not all a blue ribbon workforce where everything you do, you get a big group hug for and yay, and people cheer. That's not always going to be the case, but when you do things that are above and beyond or extraordinary, you want to be recognized for that because that reinforces the value. But I actually have more conversation with employees now on, not on their compensation, but on the last half of that where they say, I don't feel valued. Now, what's odd about that is I'll ask them, what is it that helps you feel valued? And so far, I have not had the same answer twice. So as a leader, you have to understand how folks feel valued and what they want to have as far as that type of recognition. So you take someone like me, the way that you show me that I'm valued is you leave me alone. I don't need anything else. I just want to just leave me alone, let me go do my job. Others want more consistent reinforcement, and that's perfectly fine. But as a leader, you vary your management style based upon the individual you're interacting with, and that's where you help provide the value to that person.
Hi, my name is Hajar Ventaja, and my question is, when your company grow internationally, what kind of challenges you faced, and how did you solve them, especially from the HR perspective?
Yes. Well, and the HR perspective is the same as the business perspective. The biggest challenge you face when you grow internationally is really understanding if you're making money in those markets or not. And I firmly believe that if you truly evaluated all of the indirect costs associated with global expansion of your business, that you'll find that you're not making as much money in some of those countries as you think. There is a tremendous burden on your centralized staff relative to all of your functions, your payrolls, your accounts payable processes, the cost of establishing legal entities, et cetera, that don't necessarily go into the direct P&L of that other country. But when you start to roll all that in, you recognize that, wow, I'm not really making a lot of money here. And I think that's the biggest challenge as companies face. The other challenge, so if I want to get more specific on HR, the thing that I deal with on a regular basis is understanding that, and I tell my team, it's probably more of an issue in the U.S., to be honest with you, than anywhere else, the U.S. HR folks, that you have an issue in another country, whatever it may be, the answer to the question is you don't know. You don't know because you're applying your home country biases to that situation and you don't fully understand. You have to engage with folks locally to understand the root cause of the issue and understand what the solution may be. And then I also caution them too, as you engage with the local folks with the feet on the ground there, the first answer you get back isn't always the right answer. You're about 4 questions away from having the real answer. So you got to keep digging deep. But don't assume that just because you're in a particular country that the same things apply outside of the U.S. And the biggest one I have there is on Europe. You hear a lot of folks refer to, well, we're doing this in Europe and doing that in Europe as if Europe were a country. And Europe's not a country, it's a union of many, many countries, and each one of them is vastly different on how work gets done within those countries. But the biggest challenge is, are you really profitable?
I'm sure there's one more question out there.
Do I need to stand? Yes. Good morning. Well, I don't know if you need this, but how do you maintain if you could talk a little bit about your company's culture, because not only are we learning about your role in HR, but also maybe future employees here. So talk a little bit about the culture of the company, and then how you maintain that culture across 13,000 employees.
Yes. We have the unique pleasure of changing the culture of Resideo, and as we spun off from Honeywell. And we're excited about that. There are key tenets of Honeywell's culture that we brought with us that we absolutely want to maintain, but there are parts of it we want to change. And typically what happens in a lot of cases is folks sit in a conference room, senior leadership sits in a conference room, comes up with a couple of great sayings about how they define their culture, slap it on some posters, and then hang them in all the facilities around the world, and then applaud, say, look at our new culture. And that doesn't work. The term that I've used this whole process is operationalizing. How do you operationalize a culture change? And so what we're doing as a company is we are treating the culture transformation like we would any other big business initiative. We have a team dedicated to it. We have metrics associated with it. We have clear objectives to it. So we've taken a very intangible subject and made it very tangible. We allowed every single employee in the company to weigh in and help define the culture. It wasn't done in a vacuum in a conference room. We engaged an external firm to help us with this. We have dashboards. So I know how I am doing relative to the culture transformation and how I'm living that culture in the company based upon the feedback of my peers, my direct reports, my managers, folks deeper in the organization. They are evaluating me. And from there, I have action items. And we do 90-day sprints on these action items. And so it is all about treating it like any other major business initiative, and we are making it an objective, tangible process as opposed to an intangible process. And so it's been fun. It's been an eye-opener for me on the process. And I see the results. And to change a culture, probably a 3-year process at least. It's not something you can snap your fingers. There were a lot of folks in our new company that were excited about a culture change, and we thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I naively thought this would be very easy to do, but it wasn't. It's very hard to unravel and unwind a culture because it's so ingrained in individuals that it's whether they like it or don't like it, it's hard to let it go. And that was a big eye-opener for us. But we treat it like we do any other business initiative.
These were great questions. We're just about out of time. I'm almost positive Steve has a little bit of gap in his schedule. So after we thank him and say goodbye, if you want to come up and talk to him, I would encourage you to do that. We have plenty of time to do that. I'm grateful for Steve Kelly to come here and talk to us today and explain his own background, Resideo, some advice for you, and I'm grateful for your questions as well. Let's give Steve Kelly a warm round of applause.
Thank you.